What's up, everyone? This is the Next Tape Podcast, episode 124 with Mikel and
Tanyka.
where we have conversations on different topics. So, we're gonna do a one topic episode, and that is my laptop dinging. Basically, um, we're gonna present you guys with a one topic. Tanyka?
Yep. So we are continuing our history behind blank series, which is episode 3. We did our other 2 episodes, which was, again, the 911 dispatch, Miranda rights. The last one we did was the Amber Alert. This one, we're going to be doing the Alford Plea. Is a very interesting one. Mikel, do you know anything about the Alford Plea?
Alford Plea. No, I do not know anything about the Alford Plea.
Okay, so we're going to talk about it. As then you'll learn about it. And we do have a case that I will talk about as well, to kind of explain how it's been used before. Some of you might guess what I'll talk about when I say I'll talk about a case about true crime people, but Mikel will have no clue about this. It'll be really interesting. So let's get into it. So when a judge asks how you plead to criminal charges, you can generally respond with guilty, not guilty, or no contest. However, in some states, there is another type of plea option. And we will talk about Canada in a second as well. So an Alford plea is named after a U.S. Supreme Court case that allows for sentencing a defendant who maintains their innocence. So it's basically, just to break it down for Mikel or others who don't know, basically an Alford plea is when you as a defendant are going to go up and say, listen, I'm innocent, but I recognize that you guys have a lot of evidence against me that would basically land me in a prison. So I'm going to plead the Alford plea, but I'm still claiming that I'm innocent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense, yeah.
So an Alford type guilty plea, I just kind of broke that down already, but in this sense, means the defendant decided it would be better to take a known sentence than to take their chances in a criminal trial. At trial, the defendant could face the maximum sentence, whatever that could be. Not all states provide for Alford plea agreements. If you're facing criminal charges, you can kind of, hopefully no one listening to this podcast has any criminal charges, but if you do, you can talk to your lawyer about that. Anyways, let's move on. The Alford plea is named after the U.S. Supreme Court case North Carolina versus Alford from 1970. In that case, the criminal defendant, Henry Alford, faced first-degree murder. So that would basically mean he planned to kill somebody and he is looking at life without parole, most likely. I don't think North Carolina has the death penalty, if I'm correct, but I could be wrong. Oh, no, it actually does. Okay, so the defendant could have faced a death sentence as a capital offense if a jury found him guilty. So there was a lot of solid evidence against Alford, and his criminal defense lawyer recommended a guilty plea. The prosecutor agreed to a guilty plea for second-degree murder, which carried a penalty of 2 to 30 years in prison. 2 years? Okay. Alford pleaded guilty, but said he was not guilty. Instead, he said he was admitting guilt to avoid the death penalty. The Supreme Court held that the court could accept a guilty plea based on a voluntary and intelligent choice, even if the defendant continues to claim innocence. A guilty plea means you admit guilt and receive a sentence without a trial. Not guilty means you do not admit guilt and will likely go on to face a jury trial or bench trial if you choose that way too.
Mhm,
No contest or nolo contender, sorry,
mhm, mhm,
Latin, means you do not admit guilt, but are still considered guilty by the court and will be sentenced. The
mhm,
criminal consequences of an Alford plea are the same as pleading guilty or no contest. The criminal court still treats an Alford plea as a guilty plea and imposes a criminal sentence, which may include a prison sentence and a fine, or sometimes that could be if you've served any time, which you'll kind of see that in the case we'll talk about. You can have time served, which basically could mean you're walking out of the court anyways.
mhm,
Um, you still have a conviction on your criminal record if you go this route. Background check or employment would still show your conviction. The only way you get the criminal record cleared is by sealing records or an expungement. I guess also depending on what you did, you might not get that though. One
mhm,
of the
mhm,
ways an Alford plea is different is when there is civil litigation related to the criminal trial. For example, if you are charged with drunk driving and injuring a pedestrian, that pedestrian could use your guilty plea as an admission of guilt in a lawsuit seeking compensation.
mhm,
Maintaining your innocence using an Alford plea could benefit your defense in a lawsuit. So that's exactly even in what I do. If we were to take anything to trial, um, and you have a highway traffic act offense that you've pled guilty to, or just in any sense is not like either cleared or resolved or whatever, we could use that in a trial. Be like, listen, that person has a HTA offense on their record.
mhm,
So what are we doing here, basically? You know what I mean? So it's kind of the same idea. Okay,
mhm,
so states without the Alford plea. So not all states will allow you to plead guilty, as we said before, while maintaining innocence. State
mhm,
laws or
mhm,
state constitutions may only allow for pleading guilty, not guilty, or no contest. States
mhm,
that do not provide Alford plea options include Indiana, Michigan, and New Jersey. So
mhm.
not everything is legal in New Jersey. Okay.
Right,
According to the
right.
Supreme Court, a defendant's plea has to be knowing, voluntary, and intelligent.
Mm,
States that prohibit the Alford plea fear that such pleadings could be unintelligent, involuntary, or inaccurate, which
mm,
could be used to have a sentence thrown out and you're
mm.
just doing this all over again, right?
Right. Yeah.
You need to be aware of your rights um, and understand what waiving your rights can mean in a criminal case.
Mhm,
You give up several constitutional rights when pleading guilty to a crime, including the right to a jury trial, the right to have an attorney at a trial, the right to a speedy trial, and the right to confront witnesses.
mhm,
Um, so in Canada, because I was like, do we have like an Alford plea in this country? We kind of do. So when you enter a so-called Alford plea in Canada, I don't think it's necessarily called that here though, but I don't know. You maintain your innocence, but you admit that the government has enough evidence to prove you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So we do kind of have it here.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
whatever the name we have it for here, whether it's the same, because again, a lot of our lingo can be different than the States, but it's
mhm,
still the same thing, you know.
mhm,
We do have
mhm,
that, so it's really interesting. Um, now onto the case. This is the meat and potatoes of my of this um, episode. Now, I'm going to ask Michaela this question.
mhm.
Have you ever heard of the staircase?
Staircase?
The staircase true crime documentary.
No, I never heard of the staircase true crime documentary. What does that have to
Oh,
do with what does that have to do with, like, anything that involves, like, Ca Canadian criminal history, or does it involve with, like, in general, like, worldwide?
well, the staircase. You'll get it once we kind of get into
Well,
it.
I know what a staircase is, but, like,
Yeah, yeah, but I
it's
mean,
just
in terms of
like
this,
that. Oh, okay, it's
in
a
terms of this,
okay.
um, so
Oh, the tower.
you have no knowledge, no knowledge
No,
of this. Okay.
no.
The staircase absolutely captivated the world.
Mhm,
Now, I will tell you what the case is, and it is on Netflix. If
mhm,
you ever
mhm.
choose on watching it, I will warn you, it's like, I don't know, 12 parts or something like that.
Right.
But it's such an interesting case. The
Mhm,
documentary is bonkers.
mhm,
It literally, they do talk about it in this case here, so I won't go too much into that, but it is bonkers. They did a show about it on what was it, Crave or HBO, I think.
mhm, mhm,
Starring Colin Firth, which I do talk about here again too. I swear, if no one has seen this, forget the true crime aspect of it. You just need to, okay, you know what? Let me just get into it so
mhm,
that I'll make sense of this. So, Michael Ivor Peterson, born
mhm,
October 23rd, 1943. He's still alive, y'all. This is insane. Is an
mhm,
American novelist who was convicted in 2003 of murdering his second wife, Kathleen Peterson, on December 9th, 2001.
mhm,
Now, you're probably wondering, where does the staircase come into all this? We'll get to it.
mhm, mhm,
After 8 years, Peterson was granted a new trial after the judge ruled a critical prosecution witness gave misleading testimony. And in 2017, Peterson submitted an Alford plea to the reduced charge of voluntary manslaughter. He was sentenced to time already served and was freed. As I mentioned before, that can happen. Peterson's case is the subject of the French documentary miniseries The Staircase, which again, Netflix, 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 y'all. If you haven't, I'm telling you, Michael Peterson is a character. That is
mhm,
that is the only way I can describe him. He is I don't
mhm,
I don't want to go too much into it yet just because I none of this will make sense to you, but
mhm, mhm,
it's a very polarizing case. And you'll see why. But that
mhm,
all aside, the man is a weirdo. I'm not saying he did it. I'll tell you where I stand in a second.
mhm, mhm,
But he's a weirdo. I'll say that. But anyways, let's get to it.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, the miniseries, the Staircase, which I think is actually the show. But anyways, that was starring Colin Firth and Tony Collette, which was so good. Also covers the case and its aftermath. Several other documentaries have been produced about Kathleen's death, including a sequel to the 2004 French documentary, podcast, radio shows, and other media.
mhm,
So let's get into kind of Michael Peterson, his personal life, kind of what brought us here. So, um, as I've mentioned his full name already, we'll just call him Michael Peterson. He was born near Nashville, Tennessee, and was the son of Eugene Ivor Peterson and Eleanor Peterson. He graduated from Duke University with a bachelor's degree in political science. While there, Pearson was president of Sigma Nu fraternity and was the editor of the Chronicle, the daily student newspaper, from 1964 to 1965. He
right,
attended classes at the law school of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. After graduating, Pearson took a civilian job with the United States Department of Defense, where he was assigned to research arguments supporting increased military involvement in Vietnam. That year, he also married Patricia Sue, who was his first wife, may she rest in power, who taught an elementary school on the Rhein Main Air Base in, oh boy, Germany. What does I want to say Germany? Because I can't say that word at all. They had two children, Clayton and Todd. In 1968, Peterson was commissioned in the United States Marine Corps and served in the Vietnam War. That part's true.
mhm,
In 1971, he received an honorable discharge with the rank of captain after a car accident left him with a permanent injury, or disability, I should say. Years later, during the 1999 Durham mayoral election, Peterson claimed he had been awarded a Silver Star, a Bronze Star with Valor, and 2 Purple Hearts. Spoiler alert, that was a lie.
Mm.
None of that happened. He had all the medals, but said he did not have the documentation for them. Peterson claimed he had received 1 Purple Heart after being hit by a shrapnel when another soldier stepped on a landmine, and the other when he was shot. He later admitted his war injury was not the result of the shrapnel wound in Vietnam, but was the
Mm.
result of that car accident we talked about, which happened in Japan, where he was stationed after the war as a military police officer. The News and Observer said records did not contain any mention of the 2 Purple Hearts that Peterson said he had received.
Mm.
Peterson and his first wife, Patricia, lived in Germany for some time. There, they befriended Elizabeth and George Ratliff and their 2 children, Margaret and Martha. Another spoiler alert, and I'll explain why in a second. He ends up adopting those 2 kids. We'll get to that in a second. Um, so after George's death, the Peterson and Ratliff families became very close. When Elizabeth Ratliff died in 1985 by falling down a staircase,
Mhm.
uh-huh, um, Michael became the guardian of her 2 children, as I just mentioned.
Mhm.
After Michael and Patricia divorced in 1987, Clayton and Todd lived with Patricia, and Margaret and Martha stayed with Michael, who then moved to Durham, North Carolina. Clayton and Todd later also joined their father. In 1989, Michael moved in with Kathleen Atwater, who was a successful Nortel business executive. They married in 1997, and Kathleen's daughter, Caitlin, became the 5th sibling in this blended family. So now we're seeing Kathleen kind of come into the mix now. Peterson wrote 3 novels based around his experiences during the Vietnamese conflict: The Immortal Dragon, A Time for War, and A Bitter Peace. He co-wrote the biographical Charlie Two Shoes and the Marines of Love Company, that's a long title, with journalist David Perlmutt, and co-wrote Operation Broken Reed with Arthur L. Boyd. Peterson also worked as a newspaper columnist for the Herald Sun, where his columns became known for their criticism of police and of Durham County District Attorney James
Mm.
Hardin Jr., who would later prosecute Peterson for the murder of his second wife, Kathleen. They hated each other.
Mm.
Now, let's get to the murder slash the trial. So on December 9th, 2001, Peterson called emergency services on 911 to report that he had just found Kathleen Peterson unconscious in their Forest Hills neighborhood home in Durham, North Carolina, and suspected that she had fallen down, quote, 15 to 20, I don't know, end quote, stairs. Again, the audio of the 911 tape can be heard in the documentary.
Mm.
Um, He later claimed that he had been outside by the pool and had come in at 2:40 a.m. to find Kathleen at the foot of the stairs. So just hold on to the fact that, remember, Ratliff was found falling down the stairs, and now Kathleen has also now been found falling down the stairs. Now, if you want more details on, where he connects with Ratliff, I don't know if I get into in this very much. I'll see if I'll get to it. It is in grave detail in the documentary.
Mm.
But yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yes. Mm.
um, Pearson said she must have fallen down the stairs after consuming alcohol and Valium. So, toxicology results showed that Kathleen's blood alcohol content was 0.07%, so under the legal limit. Her alcohol in urine was 0.11, and she had taken between 5 and 15 milligrams of Valium. The autopsy report concluded that the 48-year-old woman sustained a matrix of severe injuries, including a fracture of the superior cornea, I think is how you say it, of the left thyroid cartilage, and 7 lacerations to the top and back of her head. And they show these lacerations in the documentary. It is insane. you can't erase that because I'm literally seeing in my head, you can't erase it out your head. It's very weird, but we'll get more to that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Consistent with blows from a blunt object and had died from blood loss 90 minutes to 2 hours after sustaining the injuries.
Mm,
So they're basically trying to make it seem like he hit her with some sort of object, left her there to bleed out. And yeah. And I do want to also note that there was a lot of blood
mhm,
on the stairs, blood splatter going up the walls of the stairs.
mm,
Um, and that's why they were kind of like, who falls down the stairs and then like have that happen? If you
mm,
watch the mini series,
mhm,
with Colin Firth and Tony Collette, they do reenact what could have happened if it really truly was an accident. And it was kind of like she fell, hit her head, tried getting back up, slipped on the blood, fell again. Like there is that option, which maybe could happen. Um, his blood splatter expert, which was Henry Lee, which I know he's polarizing, guys, I know, but I like him. Anyways, um, kind of said like it is consistent with her falling and getting up and falling again, but we'll never really know. Um, so where was I?
mm,
Kathleen's daughter Caitlin and Kathleen's sister Candace both initially proclaimed Michael's innocence and publicly supported him alongside his children. But her sister reconsidered after learning of Michael's bisexuality.
mm,
So
mm.
he was bisexual.
Interesting.
Uh-huh. As did Caitlin after reading her mother's autopsy report. Both subsequently broke off from the rest of the family. Although forensic expert Henry Lee, hired by Peterson's defense, testified that the spatter evidence was consistent with an accidental fall down the stairs, police investigators concluded that the injuries were inconsistent with such an accident. As Peterson was the only person at the residence at the time of Kathleen's death, he was the prime suspect and was soon charged with her murder, and he pleaded not guilty. The medical examiner, Deborah Radich, concluded that Kathleen had died from lacerations at the scalp caused by a homicidal assault. According to Radish, the total of 7 lacerations to the top and back of Kathleen's head were the result of repeated blows with a light yet rigid weapon.
Mhm,
We'll talk about what that weapon could have been.
mhm.
The defense disputed this theory. According to their analysis, the lacerations were not consistent with blows of any sort because there was a lack of underlying injury, such as skull fractures or bruising, swelling,
That's
and
crazy.
hemorrhaging of the brain.
Oh,
So it's like,
oh.
if it really was a like a blow to the head,
Mhm.
why isn't anything else kind of consistent with that potentially happening?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I don't know. Huh.
Yeah, you're you're in it with us now. You
Right.
understand this case
Yeah.
is one of those polarizing things. And listen,
Yeah.
we are not done. We're
That's
not done.
wow.
The trial drew increasing media attention as details of Peterson's private life emerged. Hardin and his prosecution team, among them Mike Nafong, attacked Peterson's credibility, focusing on his alleged misreporting of his military service and what they described as a gay life he led and kept secret.
Hmm.
Hopefully, they get into that in this article. So, the prosecution contended that the Petersons' marriage was far from happy and stressing that Kathleen had discovered Michael's alleged secret gay life and wanted to end their marriage. It was the main motive that the prosecution offered at trial for, hold on, where am I? For Kathleen's alleged murder, the other being a $1.5 million life insurance policy. According to Assistant District Attorney Frida Black, may she rest in wherever the hell she is, She said, quote, would have been infuriated by learning that her husband, who she truly loved, was bisexual and having an extramarital relationship, not with another woman, but a man, which would have been humiliating and embarrassing to her. We believe that once she learned this information, that an argument ensued and homicide occurred. And yes, I use the accent because we hate her. So they're basically trying to say it was the gay, and that's why he did it,
Wow.
which okay. The reason why this also is being said because he claimed, oh, she knew I was bisexual and she was perfectly fine with it.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
call bullshit on that part. Maybe she knew that he was bisexual, but I
Right.
don't think she would have been okay with him going out there and having sex with men behind her back. I don't think
Mhm.
that would have been okay. But in case they don't bring it up here, which it's a travesty if they don't, they found a man that he was corresponding with
Mhm.
on meeting up at a hotel, and they had him on the stand. It was gold.
Wow.
And if you want to hear more from him,
Mhm. Mhm.
True Crime Obsessed did do an interview with him many years back when they covered the show. Um, and it was a fascinating interview. Um, he thinks very differently now, but he did lie on the stand. He did lie.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, yeah, he did.
uh, so yeah. Okay, so the defense argued that Kathleen accepted, as I just said, Michael's bisexuality and that the marriage was very happy, a position supported by Michael and Kathleen's children and other friends and associates. The prosecution said that Kathleen's murder was most likely committed with a custom made fireplace poker called a blow poke, which they found this blow poke
Mhm.
in his garage. And
Mm.
I will say, is somewhat consistent with the blows to her, the marks on the seven lacerations on her head.
Mhm.
But here's the catch. The blow poke was covered in cobwebs.
Oh wow.
If this was the murder weapon, it wouldn't have been that covered in cobwebs.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
that was the only thing that didn't make sense. And they found the blow poke pretty late in the trial.
Right.
Like the trial was ongoing, and that's when they found the blow poke in his garage.
Oh.
Oh, it's fascinating. Okay.
Oh.
Um, it had been a gift to the Petersons from Kathleen's sister, but was missing from the house at the time of the investigation. As I just mentioned later in the trial, the defense team produced the missing blowpoke, which they said had been found in the garage. A juror contacted after the trial noted that the jury had dismissed the idea of the blowpoke as the murder weapon. So that's interesting.
Mhm. Mhm.
So now we're going to start talking about, as we mentioned before, the suspicions that started to gather around Elizabeth Ratliff's death, who was the friend that they lived with in Germany and are the two daughters that he ended up taking guardianship of. Okay.
Mhm.
So Elizabeth Ratliff, as we talked about, was a friend of the Petersons who died in Germany in 1985, had also been found dead at the foot of her staircase with injuries to the head.
Oh wow.
Uh-huh. Her death had been investigated by both the German police and U.S. military police. An autopsy at the time of her death concluded Ratliff died from an in intracerebral hemorrhage secondary to the blood uh okay coagulation, there we go, disorder, von Willebrand's disease, based
Mm.
on blood in her, oh boy, bear with me, cerebrospinal fluid, and reports that
Mhm.
she had been suffering severe persistent headaches in the weeks leading up to her death, which apparently, like, they talked about that. He talked about that. His ex-wife talked about that. Like, this was known. She had these headaches.
Mm.
The coroner determined that the hemorrhage resulted in immediate death. Like she had basically, yeah, she hemorrhaged, and I think she had a um, what's the word? I can't remember. It's not coming to me. But yeah, like they're saying it was natural causes for her death,
Interesting.
which then followed by Ratliff falling down the stairs after collapsing. The Petersons had dinner with Ratliff and her daughters, and Peterson had stayed and helped Ratliff put the children to bed before going home. So that's the problem. He
Hmm.
was in the house potentially around the time that she could have had this hemorrhage. The children's nanny, Barbara, discovered the body when she arrived the next morning. Peterson was the last known person to see her alive.
Hmm.
Before Peterson's trial, the Durham court ordered the exhumation of Ratliff's embalmed body, buried in Texas, for a second autopsy in April 2003. Arrangements were made for the Durham medical examiner who had initially performed Kathleen's autopsy to perform this reevaluation over the objections of defense counsel, who argued that the autopsy should be performed by Texas medical examiners. The body was then transported from Texas to Durham. The Durham ME found sufficient evidence drawn from the results of the second autopsy, along with new witness statements describing the scene, to overturn the earlier findings and list Ratliff's cause of death as homicide.
Hmm.
The prosecution declined to accuse Peterson of Ratliff's death,
Mhm.
but introduced the death into the trial as an incident, giving Peterson the idea of how to fake Kathleen's accident, which I feel like would not happen today.
Yeah.
It just would
Yeah.
not happen like that again today.
I do. Yeah, I do agree. It wouldn't have happened.
No, they wouldn't have allowed it in the trial because he wasn't charged with anything in her murder, if we're calling it that, which we'll never know again. Honestly,
Mhm.
for me, I don't know if it really was a murder, but
Mhm.
we'll say that's how it's been listed. He was never charged in her murder, so why would you bring that forward in this particular trial?
I don't know.
But they're trying to establish a pattern, quote unquote.
Mhm.
That's what they're trying to do. Despite police reports that there was very little blood at the scene of Ratliff's death, very different than
Mhm.
Kathleen's,
Mhm.
the nanny, who was the first to discover Ratliff's body in 1985, took the stand at Peterson's trial and testified that there was a large amount of blood at the scene. Another witness testified to spending much of the day cleaning blood stains off the wall. Doubt as to the admissibility of the Ratliff evidence in court was one of the grounds for the subsequent appeal against his conviction, lodged by Peterson's lawyers in 2005.
Mhm.
In October 2002, acting as an administrator of Kathleen's estate, Caitlin, who was her daughter, filed a wrongful death claim against Peterson. In June 2006, Peterson filed for bankruptcy. 2 weeks later, Caitlin filed an objection to the bankruptcy. On February 1st, 2007, Caitlin and Peterson settled the wrongful death claim for $25 million,
Wow.
pending acceptance of the courts involved. Finalization of the settlement by the court was announced on February 1st, 2008.
Hmm.
So let's move on to the verdict of the murder trial. So on October 10th, 2003, after one of the longest trials in North Carolina history, a Durham County jury found Peterson guilty of the murder of Kathleen, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Denial of parole requires pre-mediation. Despite the jury accepting the murder as a spur-of-the-moment crime, which is not first degree, they also found it was premeditated, which
Mhm.
doesn't make any sense. As one juror explained it, premeditated meant not only planning hours or days ahead, but could also mean planning in the seconds before committing a spur-of-the-moment crime, which, yes, is true. Um, but I don't know. If we're saying that he'd potentially done this maybe with spur of the moment, if Kathleen found out his bisexuality in the moment,
Hmm.
then that's not premeditated
Mm.
in my eyes. Anyways,
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think that's pretty. Yeah, no,
no.
no, I do agree.
Pearson was housed at the Nash Correctional Institution near Rocky Mount until he was
Mhm.
released on December 16th, my mama's birthday, of 2011. So The appeal. So Peterson's appeal was filed by his defense counsel, with Thomas Maher now serving as his court-appointed attorney because I think David was tired. David was his trial lawyer. Um, and was argued before the North Carolina Court of Appeals on April 18th, 2006. On September 19th, the Court of Appeals rejected Peterson's arguments that he did not get a fair trial because of repeated judicial mistakes. The appeals ruling said the evidence was fairly admitted. The judges did find defects in a search warrant, but said they had no ill effect on the defense. Because the
Mm,
ruling was not unanimous under North Carolina law, Peterson had the right to appeal to the North Carolina Supreme Court, which accepted the case. An oral argument was heard on September 10th, 2007. On November 9th, 2007, the court announced that it affirmed the decision of the appeals, absent a reconsideration of the ruling or the raising of a federal issue. Peterson had exhausted his appeals of the verdict. So you're thinking, that's it then. There's nothing
mhm.
more that can be done because he's exhausted all of his appeals. But wait, there's more. On November 12th, 2008, attorneys J. Buchart Beal and Jason Anthony of Richmond, Virginia, who are now representing Peterson, filed a motion for a new trial in Durham County Court on three grounds: that the prosecution withheld exploratory evidence about the blowpoke, that the prosecution used an expert witness whose qualifications were disputed. Watch the documentary. My God, that guy,
Wow.
that guy, I don't know what he's doing today, but it's probably and that one juror based his judgment on racial factors. Because I think Peterson might have been racist, but anyways.
Mhm,
On March 10th, 2009, Peterson's motion was denied by the Durham County Superior Court. So
mm,
that's basically that. So now I'm going to move on to what I said to you. We're not done because we've talked many different ways that this could have potentially happened. At the end of the day, Kathleen Peterson lost her life,
mhm,
and it's horrible the way she lost it.
mm.
But all these different theories as to like what could have happened. I bet you weren't expecting this potential theory though. So I'm not going to say what it is. We're just going to talk about it. So in late 2003, a new theory of Kathleen's death was raised, that she had been attacked by a barred owl outside. You heard me
Mm.
correctly. An
Wow.
owl. The owl theory has entered the chat
Mm,
and had fallen after rushing inside to get away from said owl, and had been knocked unconscious after hitting her head on the first tread of stairs. The owl theory was raised by Durham County Attorney T. Lawrence Pollard, a neighbor of the Petersons, who was not involved in the case but had been following the public details. He approached the police suggesting an owl might have been responsible after viewing the autopsy photographs of Kathleen's head wounds. Y'all,
mm,
they look like they could have been made by talons.
mm,
I'm not, if you were to look, I mean, don't go look, but if you were to watch the documentary, you are going to see them. They do look like owl talons. I'm
mm.
just saying. So, um, later, when reading the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation evidence list, he found a feather listed as found in Kathleen's hair.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh. Despite having previously been informed by the district attorney's office that no feathers had been found during the investigation. The SBI crime lab report listed a microscopic feather and a wooden sliver from a tree limb entangled in a clump of hair that had been pulled out of the roots, found clutched in Kathleen's left hand.
Mm,
Mhm. A re-examination of the hair in September 2008 had found another microscopic feather. So yeah, not only was there one feather, but there were two feathers. According to Pollard, had a jury been presented with this evidence, it would have, quote, materially affected their deliberation and therefore would have materially affected their ultimate verdict. Prosecutors have ridiculed the claim, and Deborah Radish, who again was at me, who conducted Kathleen's autopsy, says it was unlikely that an owl or any other bird could have made wounds as deep as those on her scalp. I don't know, man. They showed these owl talons and what they could have looked like. They could have gone real deep. And we'll kind of talk a little bit more in a second, but um these particular type of owls are very protective birds. So the theory was that if this was a female bird who's maybe protecting her, her baby birds or whatever, and she went out there to, catch some air or something, um, and the bird saw her, it could have definitely gone and attacked her. It 100% could have happened. Anyway,
Yeah, you're right.
um, so where am I here? However, Radish's opinion was challenged by other experts in three separate affidavits filed in 2010. Despite interest in this theory among some outside advocates, no motion for a new trial was filed on this point in 2009. On March 2nd, 2017, following his Alford plea, Peterson's attorney filed a motion to allow him to pay for a bird expert at the Smithsonian Institution to examine feather fragments found in Kathleen's hair to determine whether or not she had been attacked by an owl. In 2023, so very recently, Pollard endorsed the theory presented in the book Death by Talons by Teddy Smith. Again, Wine and Crime interviewed him. Fascinating. Um, which posted that a bird attack was not restricted to the outside path, but continued inside the Petersons' home.
Mm.
In August 2010, following a series of newspaper articles critical of the FBI, North Carolina Attorney General Roy Cooper led an investigation that resulted in the suspension of FBI analysis. Dwayne Deaver, this guy, one of the principal.
Yeah, you don't like this guy, do you?
No, no. Honestly, Dwayne Deaver is a fraud.
Mm.
He was a fraud. And he not only was responsible for convicting Michael Peterson, but he was responsible for convicting other people on baseless. Like he made, and
Wow.
because he was like, I don't know,
Hmm. Hmm.
really the expert to go to on certain things.
Right.
Um, yeah, a lot of people were able to be exonerated because of it.
Mm.
And Michael Peterson was kind of hoping for the same result. That unfortunately did not happen for him. Well, or for him, maybe unfortunately it didn't happen for him. But yeah, it for others that he
Mm.
was responsible for, yeah, they are exonerated because of
Wow.
his fake testimonies.
Mm.
Um,
Wow. Wow.
yeah, so after the report found his work among the worst done on scores of flawed criminal cases, Pollard subsequently filed affidavits to support a motion that Superior Court Judge Orlando Hudson ordered the state medical examiner's office to turn over all documentation related to Kathleen's autopsy to Peterson's attorneys. However, Judge Hudson barred Pollard from filing further motions on behalf of Peterson because he did not represent him. A new motion was filed in August 2010 by my David, Rudolph, who was his trial lawyer. I just said that, one of Peterson's original attorneys who acted pro bono in proceedings challenging the FBI testimony.
Mhm.
Deaver, that son of a bitch, was fired from the FBI in January 2011 after an independent audit of the agency found he had falsely represented evidence in 34 cases,
Wow.
including withholding negative results in the case of Greg Taylor, who is a North Carolina man who spent 17 years in prison on a murder
Mhm.
conviction based on Deaver's testimony. You see what I mean? You see what I mean?
Yeah,
This
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
asshole. A blood stain analysis team that Deaver had trained was suspended and disbanded. Ah. In the 2003 Peterson trial, Deaver testified that he had been mentored by SBI bloodstain specialist David Spittle. You take his name out of your mouth. Anyways, worked 500 bloodstain cases, written 200 reports, and testified in 60 cases. During the retrial hearing, SBI Assistant Director Eric Hooks testified that Deaver had written only 47 reports. So calm it down, my guy.
Oh.
Spittle testified that he could not recall. That's okay. Hold on. Sorry. Okay. Let me repeat that. Spittle testified that he could not recall mentoring Deaver, who, since completing a 2-day training course in the 1980s, had testified in only 4 cases, the Peterson case being the third. So all of these, like, hundreds of cases he says that he testified in. The SBI cited the bloodstain analysis given in the 4th case as the reason for firing Deaver. On December 16, 2011, Peterson was released from the Durham County Jail on $300,000 bail and placed under house arrest with a tracking anklet. His release on bond followed a judicial order for a new trial after Judge Hudson found that Deaver had given materially misleading and deliberately false testimony about bloodstain evidence and had exaggerated his training, experience, and expertise. Former North Carolina Attorney General Rufus L. Edmiston said that any evidence gathered after Deaver arrived at the scene might be deemed inadmissible in a new trial. Just don't say. In July 2014, Peterson's bond restrictions were eased. In October 2014, the court appointed Mike Klickosum to represent Peterson, replacing David Rudolph. He was tired, y'all, who had been working pro bono on the case since Peterson's conviction and was overturned. Rudolph had stated that he could no longer afford to represent Peterson without being paid. On November 14th, 2016, Peterson's request for the second trial to be dismissed was refused, and a new trial was scheduled to begin on May 8th, 2017. However, a news report on February 7th, 2017, indicated that a resolution had been negotiated by Rudolph, once again representing Peterson because he can't go away. We love David. And the Durham County District Attorney. So now we're going into that Alford Plea. So on February 24th, 2017, Peterson entered an Alford plea to the voluntary manslaughter of Kathleen, asserting his innocence, but agreeing there was enough evidence to likely result in a guilty verdict. The judge sentenced him to a maximum of 86 months in prison, with credit for time previously served. So remember, he was in prison for 13 years, I think it was, 12, 13 years. So yeah, time served. So he had already served more time than the sentence itself, which was 98.5 months. So he did not face additional prison time. And that was kind of that.
Also,
So the court case generated widespread interest in part because of the televised documentary series variously named Sukon's Suspicions in English, Death on the Staircase, and The Staircase, which detailed Peterson's legal and personal troubles. 8 45-minute episodes of the documentary were assembled from more than 600 hours of footage. It was directed by French filmmaker Jean-Xavier de Lestrade and released by Maha Productions in October 2004. The documentary offers an intimate depiction of defense preparations for the trial. It also examines the role and behavior of the press as it covered aspects of the case. The filmmakers started their project within weeks of Kathleen's death and Peterson's murder indictment. Jury selection took place in May 2003, and the case itself going to trial in July 2003. Following the guilty verdict, de Lestrade interviewed the jurors to find out why they reached their verdict. By and large, the jurors were swayed by the amount of blood Kathleen lost. Like I'm telling you, it is a lot of blood for someone who potentially fell down the staircase. It's insane. It doesn't make that part of it does not make sense. As well,
staircase for staircase.
because if you think, I mean, it wasn't a carpeted staircase, so it's
Mhm.
possible
Mhm.
that you could lose a lot, but Michael, you don't get it. It is a
Mhm.
lot of blood. A lot. Like again, without seeing it, without watching this documentary, you're not even probably picturing. You're probably like, you say a lot of blood, it's like, okay, yeah, sure, it's a lot of blood. But I'm telling you, it's it does look like she was murdered. I do
Mhm.
understand them walking in there and being like, what the hell happened?
Mhm.
You can't, like, I can understand going in there and saying, you can't convince me that she fell down the stairs. Like, you did
Mhm.
something to her. You must have. Because of,
Yeah, obviously, like he must have pushed her down the stairs, or the person must
yeah,
have pushed her down the stairs, or he must have like took a weapon and
yeah,
pushed her down the stairs with the weapon.
yeah.
But
More so than anything, like, if he were to have pushed her down the stairs, there's no way that he wouldn't have tracked her blood throughout the rest of the house, though.
Mhm.
And he was found on the main level, and she was there, like, the whole thing was that she was outside with him, they were drinking together, she went
Mhm.
in to go to
Mhm.
bed early because she had work the next day, and I think she had, like, busy stuff going on with work,
Mhm.
so she was going to bed early, um, so that's the whole thing.
Mhm.
As far as we know, he would never have gone upstairs in order to push her down the stairs. And even if he did, he would have, like I said, tracked her blood throughout the rest of the house because they found him on the main level.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I can understand the blow poke of it all just because he could have attacked her at the bottom of the stairs.
Mhm.
But then again, this now people who've seen the documentary, you can visualize this a little bit better than maybe Mikkel can. But
Mhm.
if you're taking, and just trigger warning, guys, I'm sorry for what I'm about to say here. If you're taking a blow poke and you're hitting her or hitting whatever, let's say hitting something, bring it back. Hitting her again, bring it back. You're creating a cast off. The cast off, though, if that is the case and he's facing the stairs and facing her, it's going to go back behind him and hit another part of the stairs. But that's not what, or another part of the house, not even touch the stairs necessarily.
Mhm.
But they never talk about whether or not blood could have hit somewhere else. If that is the case, there's
Mhm.
only blood going up the wall of the staircase.
Mhm.
And it's not consistent with cast off.
True.
So it's like, yeah, you can see that, but then you work it in your head and it's like, but wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so where was I? Biomonitors surveyed the amount of blood lacerations, which indicated to them it could have not been an accident. Henry Lee, however, had testified at the trial that the amount of blood was irrelevant as the blood spatter indicated most of it was spattered as she coughed as the blood ran down her face from the injuries. Which again, you literally see him testing that theory out, taking
Mhm.
blood and coughing it onto the wall, and it's creating, or not, I don't know if it was onto the wall, sorry. He might have been just coughing it onto a piece of paper or something. But you
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
literally see the pattern is similar.
Mhm.
But that also doesn't mean that he didn't do it. It could have just meant she was coughing on her own blood because
Mhm.
they already said she potentially lived for 90 minutes to 2 hours after the quote unquote attack if he attacked her.
Mhm.
So it doesn't
Interesting.
necessarily mean anything.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so, where am I here?
Yeah.
Um, he also just suggested that some of the blood could have been diluted with urine because again, if you die, you do, you know,
Mhm.
release. Um, we had also um duplicated blood spatter from, as I just said, coughing for the jury by drinking ketchup and spitting it out. So that's what I just talked about. In November 2012, De Lestrade released a sequel, The Staircase 2, The Last Chance, which premiered at the International Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam. The film documents Peterson's family and his legal team's arguments in seeking a retrial in which they succeeded. So, again, all parts of The Staircase, the original, and then the subsequent, I think it was 4 episodes, are all on Netflix if you want to watch it.
Mm,
Because again, I'm truly touching the tip of the iceberg with this, as much as that doesn't make sense.
yeah.
But again, if you want to kind of immerse in the different things that have kind of come up in the media about
Uh-huh.
this case, there's The Staircase, as mentioned, which you can watch on Netflix. Murder, He Wrote, by Dominic Dunes, Power, Privilege, and Justice, Season 4, Episode 6, which was released
Right.
in March 2004. Written in Blood, The New Detective, Season 9, Episode 15. Blood on the Staircase, American Justice, Season 14, Episode 13. A
Uh-huh.
Novel Idea, Forensic Files, which I did watch the Forensic Files, half an hour.
Right, right.
It is also really good, but it just mainly focuses on the forensic aspect of things.
Mm,
That is season 11, episode 22. The Staircase Murders TV movie co-written by Aphrodite Jones based on her book about the case. Staircase Killer, True Crime with Aphrodite Jones, which you just, I guess, talked about, season 1, episode 3. Um, Stairway to Hell, The Devil You Know, season 2, episode 4. Reversal of Fortune, Dateline NBC, season 21, episode 42. Down the Back Staircase, another Dateline NBC, season 25, episode 27. I wonder if Keith did that one.
mm,
American Murder Mystery, The Staircase, Investigation, Discovery. That's a 3-part series, which I did not know they had. I'm gonna need to find that. The Staircase 2022, which is that HBO dramatization miniseries, which was really good. Really good. Highly recommend that too. Podcast, if you like that route and you want to hear more about it. Generation Y did one, season 1, episode 2. Criminal Animal Instinct, season 1, episode 1. Um, My Favorite Murder, the 100th episode that they did this. BBC Radio 5 Live, Beyond Reasonable Doubt. Real Crime Profile episodes 140 to 145. And my favorite, and that's why we drink, episode 324, Foot Pimples and Chickenpox Parties. That's the name of the episode. Um, What the French Toast, episode 28, What the Staircase, part 1, and episode 29, and What the Staircase, part 2. So they did two-parter. Time Suck and Dan Cummins, episode 456, The Staircase Murders. Um, what else? We have books. We talked about the one by Titty Smith, Death by Talons, one by Diane Fanning, Written in Blood, um, the Aphrodite Jones one, which is called A Perfect Husband, and then R.J. Parker, The Staircase, which was
mm,
independently published. But yeah, I mean, that's basically the case. I mean, where I kind of stand, I
mhm,
definitely stood on the side of he could have done it. I
mhm,
definitely think I was on that stance of that he could have done it.
mhm.
Um, just because it's like he was broke.
Right.
She was the breadwinner.
Mhm,
She didn't have that life insurance. Um, I don't think his bisexuality played a part in this at all. I think that's so I don't think that did. Um, but then when that owl theory came out,
mhm,
I kind of switched and I'm like, you know what? It is possible. It is very possible that an owl could have attacked her. Because I do think they were in love, whatever
mhm,
that could have looked like for them. But I don't know. I don't know. It's like I said, one of those polarizing cases
mhm,
that even I sometimes find myself over because I'm like, I don't know where I stand
mhm.
anymore with that case.
I see it.
Um, but
I
yeah,
I I agree. I don't know much about this case, but I agree what you're saying about this. So, Yeah.
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 And like I said, like, even if you don't watch the
Mm,
documentary, but although I do think you need to at least watch an episode just to kind of understand Michael Peterson and his
mhm,
mannerisms
mhm,
um and it's kind of who he is as a person. But
mhm,
I would recommend watching the dramatization, the miniseries on
mhm,
HBO. Um,
mhm,
Colin Firth. I mean, I love Colin Firth. I
mhm,
think he's
mhm,
incredible. He did an amazing job playing Michael Peterson. Like, he was Michael Peterson. It is
mhm.
incredible.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't quite understand that though unless you
Mm,
watch Michael Peterson himself and be able to see those parallels. So
mm,
it's yeah. So yeah. The other thing they didn't mention here is Dr. Phil. He was on an episode of Dr. Phil as well.
mhm, mhm.
So you could even just do that and like see his mannerisms because honestly, like I at the very least, like I say, whether he did or didn't do it, he is a narcissistic, lying asshole. Um, and he was an absolute weirdo at the
Yeah.
very least. But that
I
doesn't necessarily make you a murderer. So I don't
I
know.
I I agree 100% on what you're
Yeah.
saying. So, okay.
But that
Okay.
is that.
All right. All right. So this ends episode 124 of the Next Day podcast. The Next Day podcast is available on all podcast platforms. We also have a website called Tanika.
Nextdaypodcast.podpage.io.
And where else we at?
Facebook and Instagram and Next Day Podcast and Twitter, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Next Day Pod.
Okay. You can also contact us in our email at mikeltanika@gmail.com. That is mikeltanika@gmail.com. So, Tanika just basically explained the crime based on the staircase, right? Am I right?
Yeah, the staircase, the murder of Kathleen
Mhm.
Peterson, the trial of Michael Peterson, which all centered around the Alford Plea. So yeah,
Mm, okay. Okay. And yeah, interesting to learn about that. And if you want to learn more, I'm sure it's available on other platforms if
I
I'm not
listed
mistaken.
them all there for
Those
you.
are all, yeah, okay. All right. Yeah,
They're
yeah,
all
just
there
so
for you.
yeah. So yeah, so just listen to the episode, you'll get there. So yeah. Okay, so I have nothing else to say about this.
I don't.
You
I've
know? No, cool.
exhausted it
Yeah.
again and
Okay.
again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So I'm Mikel, and
And I'm Tanika.
we're out until
Next week.
next week. Peace, guys.
Bye.